So where we run application filters. No, we run URLs. And I want to come back here to rule. And one of the things I'll see is under URLs, I'll see this. And now I could use this in a rule. But it's pretty darn easy to come in here, either under applications, by the way, and type in Facebook, right? And there's a lot. There's a lot with Facebook that people use. You need to be aware. VoIP, video chat, videos, utilities, sports, right? So a lot of people like to see Facebook. So let me give you examples on why people block this. I've gone out to sites that had like 600 users, right? It was a small bank, credit union. And when we looked, right, we did some reports, we could see about 1,100 people were logged into Facebook. So how's that possible? Well, pretty much everyone there was logged into Facebook on two different devices. Their computer that the company gave them, right? Their computer, their work computer, and then their BYOD, right? They bring your own device, like their phone or their iPad or whatever, right? So Facebook, it can be something you might want to think about. But nonetheless, I could do something under URLs for that as well. And notice I have this here. I can create this here. I rarely go out here and create the objects for sorry, I'm down here, URLs. I really create them here because they're just so easy to create once I'm there into the ACP. Now, geolocation, though, I need to create from here. Notice it still has SF in there for source fire. I love that in the icon, right? All right, now, if you can do what I'm about to show you, your network's going to be so much better off. I have some companies that can do it, but most can't. So I'm going to say, I'm going to call it bad countries. I usually stay away and just name them a bland thing. But in this case here, we want to say bad countries, for us or something like that. Okay. Now do this. If you can do something like this, awesome, right? Now you're blocking everything though, but that's kind of crazy. But there's 200 countries in the continent of Africa, right? Did you know there was countries in the continent of Antarctica? Yes, there are. And the reason I knew that is because there was 3, because I get attacks from here. No, someone's not sitting up in an igloo sending me attacks. Someone is using those IP addresses to it. You'll see it like if you do BitTorrent, someone has a BitTorrent client on, and they'll go to a server, and then you'll start getting attacks from Russia. And then if you block that, they'll go to France. And then the next thing I'll see it coming from Antarctica. I kind of see this rhythm they got going, so you can watch that, something like that. But Antarctica, again, I'm sure it's a great continent, but you're going to get attacks from there. Now, we have to allow something through. So I'm going to come under North Americas, that just happens to be where I'm located, and say, I'm going to allow Canada, and then I could come down here. We should probably allow the United States, something where, and really what I ask is, where do you do business? Right. And the fact is, I get companies say, we never do business outside the United States ever. We're a local bank. We don't need anything. So it kind of depends. You might want to undo some of these based on your business. You have to do some business research. So in this case here, I'm just going to allow the United States. If I was to do this and I was to create this object and I was to be able to put it in an ACP rule, your attacks would drop by a minimum of 90%. A minimum. Now I'm going to show you what to do with this though, and how to implement that when you get into the ACP. So that would be under networks, geolocation. Now, I should have my object in here. This isn't real fast here. As a matter of fact, we can set up updates that occur at night. They're kind of long updates, take 30, 40 minutes to update the IPs because people move them around and whatnot. But we'll see that object here, and then we can use that in a couple rules, right? We're going to go ahead when we get to ACP and come back to this object and use this object. But there is some caveats if you do this. So I'll show you that when we create our rules. The time range is great. If you have, what this reminds me, it's like, if you guys remember back a year, 20 years ago, we had time-based access lists, right? That was before we had VPNs, right? That allowed people in. In this case here, this is a time range for remote access for VPNs. It's basically an access list that gives them a time on when they can VPN in. Now, I'm going to get to something a little bit more detailed here, guys. I'm going to get to a little bit more detailed, and this is called variable set. So in the variable set, we want to be careful here. we really want to understand what this does. So basically, let me open one of these up. I'm going to add a variable set, not change the default. We'll see these variables that we'll see as we get into Snort. We'll see these used in our Snort rules. And these variables are very important. And we want to make sure that they define what we're going to look at and what the Snort rules are going to look at. Now, there's a couple rock stars in here, we'll call them. And one of them is home net. That's literally our inside network, and external net. And if we're north-south traffic, that would be our internet, and this would be our internal networks, something like that. It might not be that, though. Remember, a lot of times we have east-west traffic in our server farms, say, in our big data centers. So we have a lot of east-west traffic. But generally, if we're just north-south, then we can look at it like this. Now, one of the things we want to do is to make this more efficient. Now, that being said, if you get confused with variable sets, it's better just to leave them alone. You might be a little inefficient, but at least it'll be correct and you'll see a tag. So I'm going to say pod 20 variable. Now, I can create multiple variable sets to be used within Snort policies. And these variable sets would tell us what to look at. For example, let me click on HomeNet. If I want to show you something here. So HomeNet, we see DNS servers uses whatever variable that is. And all these guys use whatever the variable is for HomeNet. All our servers and so on. So we could create a server farm variable or something. I mean, there's all sorts of different variables that you can make for various reasons. It can get very complex very fast. In this case here, I just want to change simply, let me keep this simple, and try to make this more efficient. I'm going to use now that also important Lamley enterprise object we talked about, right? So I'm going to include that in here. Now, it's very important that we spend some time on this because I'm going to use this enterprise object in different rules. It has to be right. That's why you're going to spend time on that. Now, what you don't want to do is say, have someone go, oh, I'm smart. I don't need objects. I'm just going to put in my 10 network here and everything's going to be awesome because I'm so smart, blah, blah, blah. Well, the fact is there's an error there, isn't there? There's 11. You would never see attacks. So you would stop seeing attacks on your internal network because that traffic wouldn't be inspected unless it was the 11 network in this example, right? Very bad, which is why we spend time creating the enterprise object, isn't it? Now, there is something we could do else. I usually don't do this, but you could, and you'll see some people doing this. I'm going to go to external net, and I could go to Lamley Enterprise and say exclude. So now if I take a look at this, notice this, home net variable is Lamley Enterprise, which is great. The external net, in this case, is not home net, right? Not home net. Now, this may not be what you want because it could cause some issues here, right? So in other words, it might, if we have something from the internal network and we're saying, hey, and it's causing some problems coming in and out, we might not see it because we're saying, well, don't look at something from the external net on there. So I might take this out and leave it, right, alone here and not change the external net. So now that's back to any. You might want to think about that one. It's probably better. It's less efficient like this, but it's more secure. On this one, it's secure and more efficient. So I definitely want to use that variable. So if I come back here to my ACP, which should be here, and here's a Snort rule right here, right? I can come under here, and there's the different Snort rules I can use. Now, we'll get into that, don't worry. But this is how I change the variable set over here. So if I click on this, I don't know if I'd have to get out of this ACP and then back in. I'm just not going to do that, but this is where you would set it. Another place that you could change the variable is here. That's going to set it, the intrusion policy variable set, right? We could change it for here, and there it is right there. Now I'm setting it for all my IPS policies, right? So you want to go in and change that for your policies. That's why you do it. We'll get into that. Come back over here. Okay, so in this case here, the variable set, be careful. What's the rule of thumb? When in doubt, leave it alone. But if you can get your enterprise object made correctly, then you can be more efficient, especially for home net. Just a couple more things I want to cover in this section. And a lot of this other stuff we'll cover in new sections that will be coming up with policies and so on. Now, we have 3 different types of security intelligence. And security intelligence is extremely important. And one of the reasons I still have the ACP open is because this is where it's implemented. It's implemented through the ACP. Now, one of the first things that you're going to see here is I'm going to see the Cisco, these are Cisco objects here. So you got your global blacklist, which is implemented right here. So by default, that's already implemented. Now we can see what's in there. So let me show you here. I'm going to come here and go to Talos. Watch this. I can see what's in the IP list. I didn't say the DNS URL. I'm going to come under Reputation Center. So talosintelligence.com and Reputation Center, and right here. That's what's in that global blacklist. So if I click on this, or even in all their other objects, all you have to do is do a Control A, which picks them all, Control C, and then put that into a notepad, and I absolutely do that. So I'm going to minimize this for a second, come back over here, and notice I have the IP blacklist here. So I just open up Notepad. So I just say Notepad, right? Open this up. I already have it here, but and then just right-click, Control-V, boom, there it is. Now, why do you want this? To be able to test your security intelligence, once we get our network in, right, in a few more sections coming up, we'll get our inside network working. Then we can go from that inside host, go to a browser and put in some of these IPs. I'll just copy these and put them in there. And this will allow me to test my security intelligence because they should be blocked, right, based on those objects. So let's come back over here. Cancel that out. But that's how you would do that to get the IPs. What's inside the URL lists and feeds and DNS lists and feeds? You'd have to go to your console of your FMC or your FTD boxes, and there's some commands that you can type to see those and download that list if that was important to you. So I have that, how to do that in the FTD book. Now, in this case here, though, here are my lists. Let me come back here to my ACP. Now, these are all the Cisco objects. What's in the global and those other objects were in what I just showed you. It's all the layer 3. So I'm going to actually click all these, highlight these, say add to blacklist. Now, all of these IPs, now I can see if I highlight over these, I'm not going to see, I got 0 in there. Crypto mining is actually a new one here. How about spam? There's 10 addresses. There's not a lot in a lot of these. There's a lot in the malware one. That's at 5,426. And these are updated. How often? Well, that's a good question. Let's go back here because they're managed from here. My Cisco intelligence feed, which is all those objects, are updated every 2 hours by default. Now, you can change this down to 5 minutes. I do not recommend this because when you go to deploy a policy out to your Firepower or FTD boxes, whatever, if these are being downloaded, it's going to say can't deploy, download, and process. Well, if you set this every 5 minutes, that's always going to occur. I do lower this, but I don't go more than 30 minutes. But just keep that in mind. You can go to 5 minutes, but you'll just see you'll have some errors when you try to deploy. Now, this is my threat intelligence detection feed, my blacklist and whitelist. So how do I get objects in here? Well, the fact is I can't put anything in here from here. When we do the network analysis section, we blacklist by right-clicking on an IP address, and it comes in here, and it immediately takes effect. Their TCP session is dropped, and that IP address is blacklisted. So I'll come in and go, uh-oh, that was the CEO's laptop at home, whatever. I'm going to come in here, and I'll see it in here, and I'll trash can and say save, but you have to redeploy, right? To put something in here, you have to go to network analysis and do that. And again, promise you I'll show you that. But we have to generate traffic first to be able to do that. We'll blacklist it, see it here, and then I'll come in here and show you where it is, and I'll be asking questions. Hey, where is this? You just blacklisted your mail server. See, I get that one a lot. Hey, Todd, oh my God, one of my customers calls, we just blacklisted our mail server because it was getting all these attacks, or it was sending out attacks, which is very common on a mail server. And they right-click blacklisted it, and now their mail server's in here. So I say, let's go and fix that, and that's how we'll do it. So I'll ask you that question when we get there. Now, so that's my network lists and feeds. Let's take a look at URL. Again, we use both our access control policy. Now, be careful here. Before I go on to the URLs, let me make this a little smaller here so we can get a bigger picture of it. Notice this Lamley Enterprise object. Okay, we're well aware of what that is. This is another place to use this. I'm going to add this to the whitelist. Now, I need to be clear here and be very, very careful. The whitelist doesn't allow people to go to egress. That's not what it does. And says, oh, you're whitelisted, you're good, go. Nope. The whitelist, we'll take a look down here. See this? Is used only to override the blacklist. So watch this. I'll say add to blacklist. And I don't know if you can see that or not, but there is a line through that. Why? Because it's overridden by the whitelist. The whitelist overrides the blacklist. So it's only there so you accidentally don't blacklist a host. So that email issue where people are calling me would have been solved had they had their enterprise object in their whitelist or some sort of object in here that defined their inside network or whatever, right? It doesn't do anything than that. So if I come back here again, we're come through our egress, we copy the packet, we check our layer 3 security intelligence. If it's not in the blacklist, or if it is and overridden with a whitelist though, then we're going to go on, right? The whitelist only means, you know what, we're not going to kill you here. We very well may kill you later, but we're not going to kill you right here. That's the only thing the whitelist does. It doesn't allow you to be killed here. Okay, so if I come back here, the next thing I want to do is I want to do the same thing for my URL objects. I'm going to click on all of them and add to blacklist, so I'll see them down here. Now, two things. If I come back in here to networks, I get people that click this whole thing and go all the way down here and say add to blacklist. They just get confused and they just, now what's going to happen? Well, nothing until you deploy, right? In this case, this isn't added into the global blacklist, added to your ACP, but when you deploy, all these would be blocked, right? So now I got to go in here and take all these out, right? It's easy to put stuff in here, which is why they have a whitelist, right? It's why they have this whitelist. All right, now the other thing is I typically leave these. In other words, I'm going to bring them in, and this is my first line of defense. I'm going to push this out the first day I get there because all these guys are bad guys, right? Well, the boss or whomever might go, you know, I'm kind of scared. I don't want to drop anything. I get a call. I've been at some places where you drop something. That's good traffic. You're going to have serious repercussions, right? Big financial data firms that I've done work at. So you might come over here, watch this, and say, well, you know, on these right here, I'm just going to do monitor only. So in other words, log it. Tell me you would have dropped it, but don't really drop it, right? I'm going to do like spam. Some of the stuff I do like in my class, and I'll do it here. I want this one to block because I want, actually, believe it or not, I want some attacks to get through. The security intelligence is so good that, you know, I might not get an IPS event or a file event, something like that I want to get for classroom and training purposes. So I'm going to make these monitor mode, right? That's all it says. Log it and send it down to the next and just go on to the next. So we might do the same thing here, right? Under my URLs, monitor only, spam. It's probably be good enough. All right, things like that. So that's another way to do it. But wait, there's more. All right, so let's go back over here. There's kind of a lot to this, and when we get to the ACP, we're going to add some network lists and feeds as well. But in this case here, my DNS lists and feeds has the intelligence feed for both the URLs and this, and they can only go down to 30 minutes, start at 2 hours. Sure, I'm paying for this. I might as well get my money's worth and have it uploaded. Now, we can add DNS lists and feeds. We can add network lists and feeds, right? So in this case here, if I wanted to add a new IP list, feeds are probably the best, right? They're URL feeds. New black list, and then I'll say browse. And I'll just pick one of these guys on my desktop here, right? Nope, that's not what I wanted. I want Google. Sure. And then I'm going to upload it. We use that Google one in my sinkholes lab. All right, so I'm going to say save. And now I have it right there, new blacklist. It's actually going to kill Google if I put that in there, but that's okay. And I should see it down, new blacklist right there. Then I would add that to my blacklist. And he would be right there. And then we'll just make that a monitor-only mode so we don't actually block Google. But that's how easy it is to add a list of bad guys, right? Just come in there, boom. You do have to redeploy to make that take effect. Okay, so let's do something though with our DNS. So there's nothing here. If I go into and right-click and go into analysis, right-click on URLs and blacklists, and I say, oh, I want to take that out, this is where I would find that. Now, the DNS isn't really doing anything right now because we don't have those objects like we have for IP and URL. I'd have to put them in a policy. So I'm going to jump ahead here. This is not covering the DNS policy. I'm just going to show you if you didn't want to do a DNS policy, right? You didn't want to do sinkholes and all this other great stuff we're going to do with it, then that's fine. Let's go here and at least do this, which is adding the objects. Add DNS objects in the meantime, right? This would be the minimum you do. That's why I'm going to do this. This is not a section on the DNS policy, okay? This is a section on, if you're not really going to do anything, at a minimum, do what I'm about to show you. It takes about 10 seconds for this to show up. It's kind of an odd bird there. Here it is. And then you'll see our global white list, right? I'm just going to add a DNS rule, say all objects. And what message do we want to give them? Well, that's when we get to our DNS policy, we'll do these. They're going to get a domain not found, right? We're going to change that. But under my DNS tab here, here's all the objects, right? I don't need to put in the global white and black. They're already in there. And you can't do these as monitor only though. That's the only difference. When you implement this, it will start dropping. So, but you probably want that. Okay, and there it is. So I'm going to save this. Now I'm going to implement it with these guys by going where? Here. Boom. Right now I have the DNS objects from Cisco, I have the IPs, and I have the URLs from Cisco. Do we have security? Well, I need to save this and push this out to a device that's getting traffic. Sure, then we have some security. We obviously want to do more, but this would absolutely do it. Okay, there's only one more thing I want to cover on these objects right now. Again, we'll come back to sinkholes when we do our DNS policy. The rest of these down below we'll cover as we go through the class. Now, the file list is a list of SHAs that you either determine you want a disposition of clean or you want it to be convicted with malware. So the way that, differently than the security intelligence, what you could do here is actually enter SHA values inside this, we'll call it blacklist, it's custom list, right? So I could say, I could give a list of SHAs. I get people that put in a notepad and we put that in here. But probably the better way to do this is to come and just find the file. So I'll just come up here and say, let's do Google again. You are guilty, Google. So this, and by the way, if you guys are going to do this, make sure it's not a big file if you're just testing this for classroom purpose or education, because it could take a while to calculate that. Now, I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now, that SHA right there, everyone in that file is going to have a disposition of malware, right? This does not take effect until you actually create and implement a file policy. So I'm not worried about it right now. It's not going to do anything. Now, I'll go ahead and even remove that. But the point is that I'm probably not going to do it this way. I'm going to go into network analysis the same way I added blacklists here, or things into the blacklist here through network analysis. I'll right click on a file and give it a disposition of, put it in the custom detection list, which means it's going to get a disposition of malware, always be convicted, or a clean list.